and welcome to Piano Teaching Success TV. I'm Gillian Erskine, and together with my colleague Paul Myatt, we've created this program so you can ask the questions that are on your mind. We're so excited to be here live for our UK very special edition of Piano Teaching Success Q&A at a very UK-friendly time. And if you're watching us live, let us know in the chat where you're from. The chat button's just down the bottom of your screen, and if you just click chat, and you can just let us know inside the chat, that'd be great. Well, we are so excited to introduce our panel for today. Firstly, let me introduce Nicola Cantan. Nicola is based in Ireland and is the music game queen. Nicola creates all sorts of fun teaching resources for her vibrant music teaching community. Nicola is also a bit of a keep it simple tech queen. And if you've been watching this show for a while, you may remember some of Nicola's videos in our Brave Cats, Cool Cats and Clever Cats page. So welcome, Nicola.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Terrific. Penelope Roskell. Penelope works with advanced students and teachers and is a leading specialist in healthy piano playing. Penelope is Professor of Piano and Piano Pedagogy at Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance and visiting Professor at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. Welcome, Penelope.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Sally Cathcart is a musician, pianist and teacher along with Sharon Mark Tiggett, has created an online community called the Curious Piano Teachers, which recently celebrated its 5th birthday. Congratulations. Sally has just released a new two-book series, and we'll catch on that later in the show. Welcome, Sally.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
Well, like we do each week, we're going to kick today's show off by visiting each of our panelists in their studios so you can see the setup and ask some questions. So let's start with Sally's studio. We've got a photo of Sally's studio, so let's get that up. And Sally, talk us through what you've got there.
Okay, so like a lot of people in the UK, I live in quite a small house, really. It's actually a cottage. It's an Edwardian cottage from the 1900s, and I teach in my sitting room. So this is the far end of my sitting room, and you just behind where you can see is the fireplace and things. Actually, I live just down the road, by the way, from the real Downton Abbey. Just out of interest, I live in the next village to it. So this is where I'm located at the moment, and you can see, yeah, I've got my grand piano there, along with all my kit that I use for teaching online, which is what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, so you've got a proper video camera there, haven't you? Because you do a lot of online.
I do it, yeah. Well, with the Curious Piano Teachers, we've been delivering online training, online videos for the whole 5 years of our existence. And I've been doing a lot of teacher training online, but actually teaching all my individual pupils who mostly live in the village around me. Well, that's a new and very enjoyable experience so far on the whole.
And I saw a little thing sticking up. Is that a microphone or is that overhead?
Yeah.
Another?
No, I've got a blue Yeti sitting there on the stick, and again, you know, we've had that for a little while, and I've got a webcam. So I've got the webcam on the tripod. And then I have the webcam poised over my keys, and then I have my MacBook Pro there, as you can see. And I like to stand up and sit down when I'm teaching. I found when I first started to teach online, I was sitting down all the time, and my voice was getting strained and my back wasn't enjoying it. So I tend to change position in that I stand up when I'm just talking or we're doing things together, and then I'll sit down and demonstrate. Then remember to stand up again. So having the two different cameras helps me to do that. And I've recently set up a PED cam as well.
Oh, yes, someone else had that. Well, someone else we went to teaches a lot of high students, and she had the same. I was going to say, yes, a lot of teachers found that they were losing their voice, the same thing. And I think, someone said that it might be because we're talking a bit louder.
Yeah. So, well, that's right. And because I do a lot of vocal stuff as well in terms of singing, you know, I'm quite used to taking teachers through vocal warm-ups. And I realized before Easter that I wasn't actually taking myself through these vocal warm-ups before I started. and my voice was suffering as a consequence. So just doing some simple sort of woo, just to get the voice moving, that also really helps. So I could recommend that for anybody.
Good to know. And when you like singing, we're going to talk about that later in the show. I'll get back to it. Nicola, you're not new to online teaching, are you? And you do it for your community as well. You do a lot of videos, and you've been doing harder work during this period, doing video after video to help piano teachers with their setup and remain sane. Can you show us your setup, please?
Yeah, so this is obviously the studio is in the background there. This is my regular studio, by the way. Right now, teaching online, I'm actually in my office, which is where I am right now. So my setup right now is completely different to what it normally is, but this is what it normally looks like for us. So it's very simple. It's just a piano and a keyboard side by side. There's a games area out of shot there, so there's a little table on the other side with all my games, and then tons and tons of books, as you tend to see, all organized in magazine folders, and lots of toys that you can see up in the shelf as well there.
So with your online studio now, do you have a keyboard, or like what do you?
Yeah, so the one that's in the photo there, which is just a Yamaha P105. That's now in my office, so that's beside me here in my office.
And we can just see it behind her. Yeah?
Yeah, you can just see it to the side there, exactly. So I moved that into my office because I knew I would need more tech setup, and I already have cameras set up here, and I have 2 screens and all of that. So at the very start of all of this, not knowing quite how long it would be, but knowing it would be a little while anyway, of online teaching, I moved my Yamaha in here into the office, and so that's where I teach from now.
Did you do before all of this happened? Were you teaching at all online?
But just for emergencies, so to speak. So for when students couldn't make it to me, for instance, some students travel quite a distance to me, so if they can't make that travel, it could be an hour or more to get to my studio, so sometimes that doesn't work out with their parents' schedules, and we do an online lesson instead. Or we've also used online teaching for when we had bad snow a couple of years ago, stuff like that.
Yeah. So you've been kind of set up doing this thing for a little while.
I've been doing this for a little while, but not for this kind of extended period, so it's definitely a new adventure for me in that respect.
Yeah, week after week. Thank you. Penelope, can you show us around your home studio, please, and talk us through it? There you are.
Oh, okay. So I'm not actually there at the moment, but that's the room where I teach. And I had a problem. I've been doing some online teaching for students working from a distance for some time, but I've never had good reception in my room where my grand is. So I've always had to do the online teaching upstairs nearer to the router. And I struggled for quite some weeks once we had to do everything online to get a decent system run. I tried everything. I tried a home hub. I tried extenders and so on. And still I didn't get good reception next to the ground. So I had to get an outside extension cable with a new router for that room. I've now bought a good video camera, a good microphone, but I still actually like using my laptop because for the for what they're seeing, because then I can move it around so easily and just quickly put it up and show them this or that or my feet or whatever. And one thing I found is the most useful thing of all is for teaching purposes. I have a swivel chair, so that when I'm facing the camera, I can I'm not twisting my body, and then when I turn around to demonstrate something on the piano, I can quickly swivel around. Otherwise, I think everybody's going to get terrible backache pointing in different directions all the time.
That's a great idea.
That's a useful thing to discuss. Think of. Yes. And like Kelly, I have to make sure that I don't shout at them. I have to keep reminding myself not to talk loudly. And I have a bigger break between lessons than I used to have, and shorter lessons.
How long do you have between lessons?
Well, with my advanced students, it used to be an hour and a half, and now I do it an hour, and we do them slightly more regularly, but for an hour. So they're still long and very, we cover a lot, but
that's right. It is quite
nice to have a break after an hour online. Yeah.
And because you do teach a lot of advanced students, many people with that advanced students with the volume that comes through with Zoom have struggled with the sound distorting and what have you. And some have moved to more of a model whereby the student would send their video in and the teacher will coach or just talk about, review that video with them on the is that the style lesson, or do you do a real-time lesson?
I do a bit of both. So if they've actually prepared a whole piece and they want me to hear them playing it well, then they'll send it in advance and I'll listen to it, and that is the basis for the lesson. But during the lesson, I find, you can watch what they do, you can see the movements that they're making, and that's really indicating what their intentions are. And their musical intentions are coming across very, very clearly, even if the sound's not great. So I find that I can do a good lesson. It's very frustrating when the sounds can be really horrible, and when we get, things get problem with the internet. Yeah. But I find it's good, and so many people are finding it's really good, because before they used to travel quite a long way, and now they can just pop in whenever they want.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The time traveling is lovely, and this time we save driving places is good.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to some questions now. Linda Cowell from Shropshire. I think I got that right. Did I get that right? Shropshire.
Yeah.
Good. After only 5 years of teaching piano to a 5 to 9-year-olds, I have now got an 11-year-old beginner who I've introduced to Get Set Piano alongside piano safari pieces and techniques, rhythm, notation, and sight reading card games. You'd be happy about that. He loves it all. Every week he returns online and he has well practiced and perfected pieces I've given him. We are coming to the end of book 1, and I've wondered if moving to Get Set book 2 is just going to be too easy, and worried he will lose interest. Could you suggest a pathway I could go down to maintain his interest and enthusiasm, please? He knows every musical on West End too, and I've been looking for easy West End songs for him. Nicola, could you like to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So definitely important to introduce enough challenge to the student. I'm not familiar enough with Get Set Piano to talk specifically about the pacing in that and whether book 2 is fast enough. But I'd say if you're worried about that, maybe it is a bit too slow. However, you mentioned doing piano safari pieces and techniques, Linda. So it sounds like you're using that as a supplement rather than the main method. If that's the case, I might suggest going into book 2 of that instead. Although the reading approach is maybe a little bit more gradual than most methods, I think it might be good for your student if they like a challenge, because there are those challenge pieces in there. He can play his rote pieces in there, which sound sophisticated, and the pacing quickly picks up during book 2 of Piano Safari, and leading into book 3 they'll be at quite a good level. So in terms of a main method, I might suggest that versus a more traditional, more standard method book going into book 2 of Piano Safari. And even if some of the pieces are on the easier side for the reading end of things, just use them as sight reading in the lesson, meaning just play through them once in the lesson. If he can read it no problem first try, then great, that was a sight reading exercise, move on to the next one. Make sure you're giving him a challenge to work on at home and that it's not too easy, and encourage him to work ahead in the book if he wants to do that. And on the West End thing, yeah, absolutely incorporate that at this stage and see if you can find pieces that work for that. If you can't find arrangements that work at his level, I would suggest trying those in the form of lead sheets, because they're likely to be highly chord based, and you could use that as a way to explore chords with him through the West End musicals that he loves.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Nicola. Sally, what advice would you have for Lynn?
Well, I'm just going to say hello to Linda, first of all, who I do know. And and I'm actually just going to almost echo what Nicola has just said. I actually have got Get Set book 1 here. I don't have Get Set book 2, but I think moving into book 2 of Get Set might be a possibility, supplemented with some West End stuff, and maybe you want to look at some of the Faber piano adventure support material that they have, and they have quite a few books at that particular level, probably pre-grade 1, which is West End shows and stuff like that, songs from the shows which might be suitable for him. You might also want to have a look at Piano Safari for the older student. And I actually have got book 2 of that here under repertoire and technique. And as he's 11, it might move him on faster than the Piano Safari book 2 for the younger students. Yeah. So I would definitely have a look at the Piano Safari suite of pieces, let's say, suite of tutor books as a possibility for how to move him on, keep him going, support him. Yeah, if he's 11, he's going to love chords, as Nicola said. He's going to love finding out about 12-bar blues and being able to do some improvising and maybe some even composition of his own. So you can engage him in lots of different ways there. Hopefully that's given some ideas.
That's fantastic. I think there's a lot to think about there. Thank you, Sally. Well, it sounds like Linda's using several resources, extra resources, to make learning fun for this young student, which is just terrific. We find that students like this, an approach where they can develop their musicianship skills, like you were talking about with improvising and chords and also their hearing skills and all of those kinds of skills can develop. The musician skill set, if you like, can be really life-changing for them, especially down the track. So here's a video from Paul explaining what I mean.
In April, the European Piano Teachers Association, or EPTA magazine, published my article on using creative teaching strategies to teach a lovely little piece by Thomas Attwood. ABRSM teachers will know this piece as it's the first one in the 2018 to 2020 Grade 1 exam book. Tim Topham's article in the same edition had this great definition of creativity. Creativity is about opening up our minds, finding connections in our teaching, and inspiring our students in a way that hasn't been done before. You know, being a creative teacher is really just about having an open mind and the ability to think critically about how we approach pieces. For me, creative teaching really is finding as many different ways as I can to teach a piece so that my students are engaged, then they can't help but understand. The approach I'm about to share with you is whole body learning. It's an integration of the principles of Orff, Delcros and Kodály with a few modern twists and adaptations for teaching piano. For more than 25 years, whole body learning has been the underpinning philosophy for all courses at Forte School of Music. We've seen thousands of students blossom into amazing musicians over this time, so we know it really works. The goal of whole body learning is to develop a musician's skill set, one that can be transferred to any instrument. Traditional approaches of reading then playing aims to develop simply one skill. As a musician, we need to be able to hear what we play for performance and memorization, play what we hear, creativity and jamming, read what we play to follow a score, play what we read for sight reading, write what we hear for composition, and hear what we write for theory. We need a solid chord experience for memorization, creativity, lead sheets, pop songs, arranging, composing, and of course, this helps to fast track our learning and memorization for intermediate to advanced playing. What's a musician without being able to play collaboratively? So our students can play in a band, play a duet, or play with others. To do this, they need to be able to read or follow a score, listen to make sure they're keeping in sync with the others, and of course, play their own part. When I start working on how I'm going to teach a piece like Theme by Thomas Attwood, my first step is to identify all the learning points and then plan how I will teach them, and I put them in a worksheet. Once I have that all detailed, I can work out what my student needs to know before playing this piece. Let me show you what I would do in step 1. So this piece is in D major. It's a required scale for this grade. So to start, I will teach a 5-finger pentascale in D major along with chords 1 and 5-7 or D and A7, which are used in this piece. Once the students have the pentascale under their fingers, we'll move to a 1-octave D major scale with chords 1, 4 and 5-7. If you teach pentascales and chords to your beginners, this process is really quick. In a couple of weeks, when they have all this under their belt, I would then try to extend them with playing the scale with an Alberti bass, like this. It's a bit tricky, but they love a challenge, especially when you don't make them read it. Whilst doing this prep work, we're developing and preparing their ear for the tonality and harmony of theme. During this time, I'm also going to start to teach the lyrics of this song. Gillian and I are creating a unit in our Piano Teaching Success Facebook group. If you'd like to see the next stages, just join the Facebook group. We've also created a teaching pack that goes along with Theme by Thomas Atwood. It has studio licensed sheet music, a lyric sheet, a lead sheet, backing tracks, as well as full lesson plans. It's available for just £3, $4 US or $5 Australian, and you can get it at pianoteachingsuccess.com or just check the show notes.
Well, thank you, Paul, for that. I hope that gave you a few little bits of inspiration. Well, making learning fun, and especially holding our students' attention in an online lesson, can be challenging at this time. We had this question in a few weeks ago, and given the panel we have today of fabulous experts, I'd be keen to have your thoughts. The question is from Sophie, and Sophie says, I'd like to know what kind of games or activities teachers are using to help engage students online. I've been using clapbacks and playbacks, keeping it nice and simple, always starting on middle C, and they play back. I was wondering if there was anything else that doesn't require me being able to use the fancy features on a computer to play with. Sally.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's really important to have things that you can do that don't actually require the screen share or anything like that. So we've come up with a few actually over in the Curious Piano Teachers. So one really good one is guess what bar this is. So you take a piece that they're learning and you play them one bar of it, or even half a bar, depending on the length of the bar, and they have to work out which bar it is that you're actually playing to them. Yeah, so that's quite a lot of fun, and especially if you put a bit of a time limit on, which is what my next idea is, the 60-second challenge. And the 60-second challenge is, again, you can base this on a piece of music that they're learning, and you fire as many questions at them as you possibly can in 60 seconds, and they have to see how many they answer. So it might be, what's the time signature? What's the key signature? What's the third note in bar 5? You know, how many dynamic indications are there? What finger would you start this piece on? So, and you can almost have a studio challenge running on this and have several of your students taking part in this, because they always like to know how everybody else is getting on. And none of it requires any tech kind of at all.
That's fantastic, and really good for all age students, that one. You could even have they can't see the egg time, but if they could see an egg timer, you could have that on. They could still, with particularly face-to-face lesson, they could see that sand going down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and adults love it as well. You know, it's a thing that you can do. These kind of games you can do with any age. I mean, other things would be to have. I'm just leaning around here to get okay. One of my ducks. Can you see her? Yeah, there she is. This is Super Sally duck. That I have a whole range of ducks sitting here behind me, which you can't.
Yeah, my ducks boxes, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's nothing like a toy or something like this coming out just to liven up a lesson and to help bring learning to life. You know, can you play that piece through? You know, can you play that little section 3 times? And if you get it right, you know, Super Sally is going to fly across the screen. And if she doesn't fly, it means you've got to do it again, basically. Or get them to get their pet, you know, bring their toys to the lesson, because that we can always find a use for them.
Yeah. And sometimes you go, do you think Super Sally should be flying or not?
That's the one.
Usually they man up and they go, no.
Yeah, they're very honest usually, aren't they? Very honest. They know deep down.
So which is really good to do. Nicola, do you have any ideas? Quick ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I would say is, for anybody who is not up for the tech of getting games onto screen share. I totally get that. That's totally fine. But if you do have games that you normally play in person, I would encourage you not to think that they have to all just be set aside for online lessons. Many of my members, yes, are using screen share games, but other ones have just gotten a magnetic whiteboard, or even you can get like a cookie sheet, and just stick your game board to that and move magnets around as counters. So you can just literally have vertical games. So if you're already playing games in person and you've just put them all aside right now, that would be my first tip, is you can actually just hold things up to the screen and you can move things around. Yes, the student isn't getting to move it around, but they will still love it. Mm-hmm. In terms of stuff you can do that's not just clapbacks, that is a more physical game, I have a whole set of games on Vibrant Music Teaching. When all of this started, I put out a set called Web Wonders, which is 12 games that work without any stuff whatsoever. You don't need anything for any of them. Mm-hmm. The basic trick, I'm going to give you the magic ingredient that works for most of these types of games.
Share it with us.
Yeah, this is how they're created. Well, a lot of them. It's basically this versus that, and you give each one an action. Okay? So if you can do this with anything. It can be major versus minor. It can be high versus low if you have a brand new beginner preschooler, right? And you give each one an action. If your student is on the younger side, get them to pick an animal to represent each action, to represent each sound, or concept, or whatever you're drilling with them, and have them do different faces. So maybe it's a lion's mane that's like this, and then it's a little mouse like this, something like that. If they need to get up and moving, then it can be stretching up tall and crouching down low. Just that simple trick of assigning one action to each thing and then playing examples or showing them examples, it'll work for so many different things. So if you can take one thing from this and just apply it throughout your teaching, that would be the simple trick that you can do.
And it solves that whole thing about them being glued in one spot, doesn't it? You know, that movement, a little bit of movement really can liven up them and keep their attention and focus, which is fantastic. That's terrific. Great ideas. Thank you, Nicola. Claire from Melbourne has this question. I don't teach for exams, but I do want my students to have a good technique. I'm worried that teaching scales, exercises and studies will just be too boring and they won't practice and will lose interest. What do you suggest? Well, Penelope, you're an expert in technique here. What would you do here?
Okay. It's a very common question, this. My thought on this is that technique is about the movements that we use to create sound. That's all it is. It's the skill to be able to use the right movements to create the right sounds. And so I think the first thing we should be doing when we're working on technique with people is actually teaching them how to use the right movements to create the sounds that we want. And there aren't that many movements to choose from, really. There's up and down movements on the keyboard, there's sideways movements, there's forward and back going to the black notes, there's rotation movements, there's circular movements, and there's different types of finger touch to create different types of sound. So what I've done in my book, The Complete Pianist, is used exercises. They're all my own exercises. I've created about 300 new exercises, which are very, very short. So they're about movement. They're about using natural movements, the sort of movements that we'd use in our everyday lives, to create specific sounds and musical effects. So I'm a great believer in starting with very short exercises, because if they're really simple, easy to remember, then people can focus on actually what they're doing and how they're moving and the sound that it's creating. And once you've done those very simple exercises, then you can put it into practice in maybe a slightly longer short study or something. So you're really embedding the technique that you've learned in something a little bit longer or on a scale or whatever. But I think, and then of course you can then put it into practice in pieces in different contexts. But what I'm not in favor of is just giving a student a very long study, which they have to spend a lot of time note learning on. And And it's really can be actually negative practice if they're practicing it with a poor technique. So what you really want to be doing when a student's coming up to any new challenge is to be looking ahead and thinking, oh, in that piece they're going to be playing quite a few bars of rotation or some trills or that scale in F sharp minor or whatever it is. So ideally, a few weeks before, you start with a very, very simple exercise which teaches them how to do that really well, so that then when they come to play it in the piece, it's easy. So it's in the preparation and keeping it very simple and using very simple natural movements. And that's what I've been using as the basis in the whole of my book.
As you say, you have written a book about this, and it's called The Complete Pianist. I think it should be called The Piano Teacher's Guide to Teaching Anything. It's like 560 pages. And how many videos go with this book?
300 videos. So everything, every exercise, every comment, every point is illustrated by me. I do all the videos, create all the videos so that it's very easy to follow. So you can teach yourself from this book, really. And you can use it for your students as well. So you can pull out sections of the book and show them to them and so on. So
I'll come back to the book in a minute. Paul actually interviewed you about piano technique and what have you. And let's look at that video now.
So posture is a really useful thing looking at. I think so that's a whole body issue, obviously.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether you found this, but if you're actually sitting comfortably, then the hands feel a lot more comfortable. As soon as you're really tensing your back, it really affects the hands and the arms. It affects everything further down.
I totally agree with that. I suppose since we've had lockdown, what we've been discovering is how our students are sitting at their pianos and being, oh my gosh, being horrified at some of the, oh, I know why you're not playing very well now.
And also what the quality of their pianos are. You suddenly realize, yeah. No, I think we've all noticed that and discovered that. I think other things, so for instance, another really important thing to look out for right from the beginning is the angle of the arm and what I call the alignment. So for instance, because so many of the tutor books start on, I'm just going to actually point it down so you can see my arms at the moment. They start with everything in middle C position. So we are in a very peculiar alignment here. This is twisted this way a little bit, and then it's sort of twisting this way, and then the elbow's being held in. Whereas what we want to be doing is feeling that we're using the natural alignment of the arm. We want to bring the arms up into a very natural position, which means that it's really advantageous if you have been doing an exercise here to then say, well, can you play it out here? Can you play it out here? So they're always reverting to a much more natural position.
Yes.
Otherwise, they start, and maybe for several weeks, they're playing very much in this position, in middle C position. And then they get a little bit stuck in that position. And so that when they go out, they sort of go out in this position. And you see how uncomfortable that looks. The shoulders are a bit tight, the elbows are a bit tight in. The hand is not lined in a straight line with the forearm. What's really, really useful is to try and make sure that they're not only in that position, but they're really using the whole range of the keyboard. And you can can you play that right up at the top? Can a bird be singing that? Can an elephant be singing it down there? And so you're moving around the keyboard as much as possible, because what we're trying to do at the early stages is to get the freedom of movement. And that's a difficult thing to balance with the problem of the note reading, which tends to be, let's start from 2 or 3 notes and then expand out from there. But I think to always say, right, we played it starting on middle C. Can you now play it starting on the C above or the C above that? Or can you play it on black notes, so that we're keeping the freedom of movement between the white. I'll just show you. So what we want to do is to get real freedom of movement forwards and back as well. And in order to do that, we've got to have a really soft elbow.
Yes.
So if at the beginning we add in some movements from white notes to black notes, we're keeping that elbow nice and fluid. Otherwise, the danger is we get stuck in one position, the elbow gets a bit tight here, it gets fixed. And then when we try to get to the black notes, I'll even show you here, So we're in a very awkward position here. And then to get to the black notes, we sort of stick out the finger to reach out to there, which means that the hand's in a very clawed position. These are too curved, these are too straight. It's very difficult to play evenly in that way. So we want to be in a position where we can easily just move between the white notes, the black notes, and that the elbow is really soft, and we can do that really quickly. So we can move around quickly.
We have a lot of Taubman teachers in Australia. And would you say that this book would be a complementary approach to a Taubman approach?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm an admirer of Taubman. I didn't learn from a Taubman teacher, and I only really came across her work just recently when I'd written my book and was trying to assess it against other books, make sure that I wasn't contradicting a lot of other people and so on. And I think she was a great teacher and a great lady, real character too. And I think a lot of what she teaches is really, really good. I use quite a lot of rotation in the book, but I also use a lot of up and down movements, side to side movements. I use a lot of rounded movements. I do use a little bit more sideways wrist swiveling than she uses. And of course, this book is very, very fat. I mean, the first 2/3 is probably, the first half is about technique. All the rest is how we put that into practice in musical examples, and it's about harmony, phrasing, melodic shaping, rhythm, pedaling, how we study, how we practice. So the intention in writing this book was to make it the most comprehensive book on piano playing, to cover virtually everything. And that's what we're trying to do.
Hence its name, The Complete Piano.
Yes.
I think that's right too, having had a little glimpse through that book. We're going to come back to that book in a minute, and we're going to have a sneak peek, which is going to be really fun. But we have had a little question in chat, which I'd really like to throw to you, which is from Bernadette Rickett, which is, I have a couple of students with very flat fingers. They don't seem to be able to play with curved fingers at all, and this is really affecting their sound production. They play extremely quiet with no expression. What are the best techniques and ideas for getting them to play with curved fingers? Penelope, can you?
Yeah, okay. Right, in the book I give you quite a lot of exercises for this because it's a very common problem, and it's most common in students who are really hypermobile. That means they've got a lot of flexibility, which is an advantage, but it can be a disadvantage in that it can produce some weakness in some of the joints. So it sounds as though they're probably very weak in this joint here, and they could really benefit from strengthening that. This is using some muscles called the intrinsic hand muscles, which are absolutely vital for piano playing. So it's really worth spending a little bit of time doing this. And I have some exercises which I use which are away from the piano initially. There's two main exercises. One which is just actually just moving the fingers from here, just tapping them. I call this a quacking duck because it's like those shadow pictures that we do on the wall where okay, and this is actually moving from here, so it's really strengthening it, and you do it with each finger, okay, and especially focus on the 4th and 5th because those tend to be the weakest fingers. When they've done that for some time, I do another exercise which you can do over your knee, but I'll just do it over my hand, and what you just do is slide your finger down this way. Now you'll probably find that those students who have really weak hands find doing that with the 4th and 5th fingers really hard, so they might start to do it by tensing up the wrist, but the real challenge is to keep the wrist really soft and to slide these fingers down your knee or down the arm of a chair or down a cushion or whatever, however you want to do it. And what you do is you build that strength up very, very gradually. So depending on how strong they are already, if they really struggle to move that at all, you say, well, do it 3 times a day initially. And then the next day you do it 4 times, 3 times a day. And then the next time you do it 5 times and so on. So after 2 or 3 weeks, they've really got quite strong in those fingers. And then you find that they can start to put it into practice in playing chords and in playing scales and scalic passages because they've got the strength then here. Those exercises really strengthen this arch There are other exercises you can do as well. You can just pull your hand up in this way. There's a lot of exercises you can do there. If you don't want to buy my book, there's a website that I created, which is called healthypianoplaying.co.uk, and that gives quite a lot of hand strengthening exercises in it. I believe, if I remember correctly. So I've done a lot of different things. But those are really good things, and they build up very gradually. Whereas if you say to them, no, you must hold this bridge up and get it stronger and play with really curved fingers, what happens is that everything gets a bit rigid. And then that causes more problems in the long term. So you don't want them to get overly curved. You don't want to force the wrist or force the fingers to do that. So what these exercises do is they strengthen the hand very, very naturally away from the piano over a certain period of time. And then when they put it into practice in the piano, they can keep the soft wrist while maintaining the arch of the hand.
And and we're going to we're going to actually go out on some piano playing by you, which demonstrates that beautiful softness and fluidity later in the day.
Yeah.
Let's have a look through your book though, because I really want, it's just a huge work that you've put together, and I was going through it the other day and looking at broken chords, because a lot of teachers don't know how to teach broken chords, and they're a bit of a little unique thing in themselves, and you just sort of say, well, this is what you need to focus on. So just valuable for anybody who teaching. I was just thinking, if you want to teach anything, arpeggios, this is how you teach arpeggios. It was just really, really fabulous. So
yeah. The idea is that it's there for all teachers who want to use it. It's got, each chapter takes a topic. It's not a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 progression. It takes a topic, and then it shows you how to teach it to the real basic exercise, the real beginning exercise. And then it shows you how to develop that, say, for intermediates, and then how to do it yourself for more advanced playing. So each topic has a sort of gradated sort of progress thing with exercises and with musical examples at different levels.
And the little videos are you get them by doing a QR code, isn't it?
You can either use it on your phone and just put in the QR code, which I don't tend to do. I tend to just open it up on the website. There's on the Peters Edition website. And that's quite useful because it's just got them all there, and you can just click down each one as you want to watch the next one. So for me, I find that's the quickest way to do it, but both ways, you can do it either way.
Terrific. Well, if you'd like to like Penelope's book, there's a special 20% off discount. The book is normally $122 Australian. In the UK, I'm not really quite sure of the UK price. Can you help us out there?
$44.95, yeah.
Pounds. In Australia, we've only got 6 copies left, and actually one went today just when Paul put the full video. We've got a full interview with Penelope, back 30 minutes up in our Facebook group, and I think already one sold today. So there's only 6 copies, or there was only 6 copies. There are 5 now, and it's a 3-month wait. So if you want one, get on there and get it.
But there's not a 3 months wait if you want to get it from the UK.
If you're in the UK, it's fine. And so it's blackrockmusic.co.uk, and Peter will sort it for you. If you live internationally, Peter from blackrockmusic.co.uk will send it to you as long as you pay the postage. Yes, otherwise, if you're in Australia, you can buy it from blackrockmusic.com.au. So we'll put all the links in the show notes for that, and you can get it that way. Well, we like to bring you and your teacher. We've had so many, I'm seeing in the chat, so many people asking so many questions, and we'll try to get to those at the end if we've got time. But we want to bring to you panelists on future shows that can share their amazing expertise and help you with the challenges that you are having in your piano teaching. So we're going to do a bit of a poll, or we're going to ask a question. We're going to ask you to answer that in the chat if you're watching us live. So if you're not on chat, just as down the bottom, if you put your cursor down the bottom, it'll go and you click, you'll see chat and a little sidebar will come up. I think if you're on an iPad, it'll be something different. And here is the question, which is, when it comes to piano teaching, what is your single greatest challenge? So if you can answer us in there. If you're on if you're watching this on Facebook, just put a response under this video. And if you're watching us on our website, we'll have the comment section on, so you can put the answer to the question there. So the question is, when it comes to piano teaching, what's your single greatest challenge? Teaching sight reading. Oh, sight reading, another sight reading. Okay. Student directly with visual, yeah. Okay. Technique. Oh, keep them coming, guys. Getting students to be enthusiastic. Yes. Motivation.
Brag tags are a wonderful incentive program that help you encourage, promote and celebrate positive behaviour as well as reinforcing learning. Print the brag tags out, and when a student demonstrates a behaviour or achieves a goal that you feel is worthwhile, give them one. Here's the brag tags we've got for you. I mastered something tricky. I learned a piece on my own. I finished a book. I focused for the whole lesson. I fixed my own mistake. I tried something difficult. I added a piece to my concert list. I figured it out on my own. I did what I said I'd do. I know where middle C is. Let me show you. I know all the white notes on the piano. Ask me one. I know my right hand and my left hand. Let me show you. I learned a new symbol. Just ask me. I can sing and play a song. Let me show you. I can play a scale. Ask me to play it for you. I learned a new chord. Ask me to show you. I've mastered a piece. Let me play it for you. I've composed a piece. Ask me to play it for you. I arrived ready to learn. I ignored distractions. I proved that I can do it. I was not afraid of something new. I reached a goal. I took charge of my learning. I used positive thinking. Clever monkey. I used clues to help me work it out. I figured it out on my own. The brag tags have been added to the resource kit this week. If you're already a member, just log in or register at pianoteachingsuccess.com.
So that teacher resource kit is completely free, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes, and you can get one for yourself. Well, Susie Ingram from Oxfordshire asks, I find with some of my students that they get to a certain point and then they don't move any further, saying that anything new is too difficult. How can I help them get past this point? Sally, can you help us?
I think it's all to do with them finding out what it is that they want to get from learning the piano and finding out the wimp, as we call it, what's in it for me. And one thing that as a teacher I think you have to be really careful of is to get the right repertoire. What repertoire do they want to learn? And involve them in the whole planning of their learning. So having a piano lesson or learning the piano is not something that we, the teacher, do to them, but actually it's something that they are motivated in themselves to want to do. Because often if they are not making progress, it's probably because they've lost that motivation, because they don't kind of get what it is, why are they doing this? That can really happen if they're doing a lot of exams all the time and they don't really see the point of exams, or if they've got something that actually, going back, they don't understand things really fully. I mean, I find in my research that I've done that a lot of students might get to grade 2 or 3 level. I don't know what level this student is, but grade 2 or grade 3 level, and then suddenly things get harder at grade 3. And whereas up till then they've been doing okay, they've been using their ears lots and lots, they've been listening, they've been imitating an awful lot rather than actually knowing and understanding what it is that they're reading from the music. All of a sudden the music gets harder at grade 3. They can no longer, as I call it, blag it. They have to know what those little dots mean. And playing the piano is a really, really hard thing. To play and read at the same time takes a long, long time, much longer than we think, to develop, which is why you have to develop the reading separate from the playing initially. And the two things go along as a parallel stream. And then eventually people come to play from reading notation. Yeah. So it could be that he's reached that point that actually the reading isn't comparable with what he wants to play. So it's a question of finding out what he wants and, you know, helping him to unpick what he understands and what he doesn't understand and what he wants to do in the future. Does he want to do the exam route? Does he want to learn how to play the 12-bar blues? Does he want to do more improvisation? Actually, because all the 12-bar blues, improvisation, that all helps with the reading skills. It is all connected at the end of the day.
Yes, yes. And sometimes, as you sort of pointed out earlier on, sometimes students do actually end up playing by ear to start with, but they get to a point where they have to read if they want to progress further. But it's happening sort of inconsequentially rather than deliberately. And you've just actually written a book about how to engage the ear and sort of connect that and use the sound before symbol approach when teaching piano. Would you like to tell us all about that?
Yeah, because I think at heart we are musicians first. Before we are pianists, we are musicians. And we have to develop the musician in one before you can actually apply that to the piano. You know, it doesn't matter what instrument you learn. We all have things as musicians that we share. We all have a sense of the pulse. We all understand the same rhythm. You don't learn a different rhythm to be a violinist than you do to be a pianist. They're all common. And too often we go to the piano to learn how to read. And it's interesting because Penelope was referring to this earlier, and how the middle C approach can fix things. And as students start to learn to read and play at the same time, I keep giving an analogy. It's like learning to ski downhill whilst also being taught to read in Italian as you learn how to ski. It's that level of difficulty when we teach our students to play and read simultaneously. And no wonder they all end up with an awful lot of tension. On the other hand, if we can get the music in them, if we can get it in their ear, then they are, as my book says, ready to play when they have that music inside them. The music is free to come out when you already have it in your ear. And really, that's what the whole series is based on. It's based on developing these musicianship skills that a lot of children come with, but they don't necessarily know or understand them. And through the musicianship skills, you can develop their understanding of rhythm. They can become fluent readers of rhythm. They can understand pitch. You know, a lot of children, they don't understand pitch. They don't understand higher and lower pitch, let alone what it looks like on the stage. And so we have a lot of our teaching back to front. It's a bit like if we're learning to read a book, you don't start with the book and then you go back and tell them what the sound is, and then you tell them what the meaning is. You know, children learn to read in a particular sequence, in that they learn to speak first, and they learn to speak through imitation, through observation, and then they try out their own speech, and it's a bit garbled and it hasn't got very good grammar. And then as they hear more and more speech, they become more fluent. And it's only when they're fluent do we actually teach them to read. And eventually then they also learn to write as well. And music has to follow exactly that same progression. And any other progression, it works for some of us, because I have that garbled progression, you know, and I've made it through. But what worries me is we are survivors. We are survivors, but there are so many people out there who are not survivors.
Paul, by the way, so Paul had a chat with you about your book, and I'd like to show that video right now.
Inspiration for these?
Okay, so the two books are a new series of books called Ready to Play, and the first one is called Off We Go, and the second one is Moving Up. Now, the inspiration, it's a very long history. I'll try and give you a short version, but when it is all to do with engaging the ear and making the listening at the center of all music making. And in piano lessons, it's really easy to avoid that. It's really easy to bypass it. And I discovered this when I was a young teacher, and I discovered how easy it is to go from the notation straight onto the keyboard without the ear getting involved at all in any shape or form. And I first kind of started to dive into this when I did an MA, and I did a dissertation at the end called Developing the Complete Pianist, which looked at the idea of memorizing, internalizing, and improvising, and the importance of those three things in the development of young pianists and young musicians. And then I took that idea a bit further, and I was awarded, luckily, a Churchill Fellowship. And I went to places like Hungary, and I went to South Africa, and I went to Cuba. And I looked at their music education and how they all sort of put the ear at the center of what they were doing. And all the same time, I was looking at how can I do this in piano lessons? And I was also training during all this time as a Kodály teacher. And that was just like this, oh my goodness me, look at this world, that as soon as I start to use this whole approach, then the kids get it. They begin to understand because they have the sound in their head. And the thing with things like solfa, sol mi, it gives people a structure, not just children, because I work with a lot of adults as well, classroom teachers, and it gives them a structure and it gives them a scaffold on which they can hang their understanding of notation, of pitch, and of rhythm as well. So the books basically come out of all that, and it's taken a long time to get there, but generally I've worked over time to create a way that children can approach the piano with the sound already in their head, so that we're following through this basic principle that you'll know, Paul, the sound before symbol. And it's been a long journey, but it's been such fun in doing it, and I've had lots of help from all my pupils that have worked with me over time.
You've had a few guinea pigs then? That's where the books have come from.
Quite a few guinea pigs, yes. Over the years, this is decades of work that's come into this this new series of books. Yes, indeed.
Well, they look like great books, Sally. And you can get Sally's books from blackrockmusic.co.uk. Unfortunately, they are not available in Australia, but Peter from blackrockmusic.co.uk will send them to you anywhere in the world. So we'll put a link to how you do that in the show notes. And all of our guests have actually we've got some special offers for you tonight. Sally, as I mentioned before, is one of the Curious Piano Teachers, and her site, curiouspianoteachers.org. They're doing 1 month free at the moment. So if you want to go and check out what Sally and Sharon do in their community, you can do that. Nicola has got a $1 for 1 week trial of the vibrantmusicteaching.com. So that's fantastic. Thank you. It's especially for viewers of this show. We've got a link in our show notes. And blackrockmusic.co has 15% off plus free postage over £15 on Penelope's and Sally's books. And Blackrock Music Australia is 20% off Penelope's book. Well, what a show. And we've had so many questions in the chat, and it's just flowing by. I can't believe it. We will get to those questions in our future shows, I promise you. But that's all we have time for today. And I'd like to thank Sally Cathcart, Penelope Roskell, and Nicola Cantan for being with us today. And next week, we'll be back to our normal time of Thursday morning at 11 a.m. So sorry, UK viewers, you'll be asleep. So it's back to watching us while you eat your cornflakes. As always, if you are on our watch list, you will receive this episode straight into your inbox, or you can catch the replay on our Facebook group. Next week, we have another amazing panel for you, including Bradley Sowash, who will join us from Ohio in the States. Bradley is a composer and teacher and co-founder of 88 Keys. So he's a whiz at teaching jazz and creativity. So any questions you have about that, please send them in. And Melody Deng will join us from Auckland in New Zealand. She's pretty techie and worked with Ray on her Fit for Piano book, if you watched last week's episode. And Melody has got some fantastic fresh ideas for integrating apps and technology into your lessons. Bradley Eustace joins us from Melbourne, Australia. Bradley is a composer, publisher, music technologist, and piano teacher. And many of Bradley's works are features in a number of exam syllabuses. So it will be great to have Bradley on the show and talk about his music. So if you'd like to ask a question, it could be a general question or a particular question for one of our panelists. There's 3 ways you can do that. You can send us an email, you can post it in our Facebook group, the Piano Teaching Success Facebook group, or you can ask a question, click the Ask a Question button on our website. Well, I'd like to thank Paul Myatt, who's been producing today's show and is responsible for all the videos and behind the scenes tech. We're going to go out to the beautiful music and effortless playing of Penelope Roskell, as she shows us what a healthy piano playing looks and sounds like with a snippet of the Chopin Ballade, number 3 in A flat major. On behalf of all of us, stay well, and we'll see you next Thursday.